The Soviet Union often touted itself as a federation of equal republics and peoples, yet from an outside perspective, it frequently appeared as a Russo-centric empire. This discrepancy prompts a critical question. Was the Soviet Union genuinely a union of nations, or was it merely a continuation of Russian imperial dominance? Defining an empire can be tricky, but if we apply this concept to the USSR, we can identify several features characteristic of other empires. For starters, there was a central authority, Moscow, from which decisions were made that affected regions far removed from the capital. This system often resulted in wealth flowing from the periphery to the center, benefiting a single dominant ethnic group, the Russians, while imposing their language and culture on the various nationalities under their control. To maintain this dominance, the Soviet regime employed violence to suppress dissent and prevent any aspirations for independence. So, how accurately does this describe the Soviet experience? The answer depends largely on which historical period we examine. In the early years following the 1917 revolution, the Soviet government faced enormous challenges. It was a chaotic time as leaders sought to reinvent governance while grappling with the legacy of the old Russian Empire. The early Soviet administration was messy and often ineffective. Things began to stabilize when Joseph Stalin rose to power after Lenin's death. Stalin believed he understood ethnicity and culture well, and he set out to create a unified Soviet identity. Although he was Georgian by birth, he recognized the central role of Russian culture and language in shaping the Soviet Union. While Lenin had advocated for the promotion of local languages, Stalin shifted this policy toward prioritizing Russian as the primary language of the state, emphasizing a collective identity that superseded individual ethnic identities. Economically, the USSR attempted to distribute resources more evenly across its republics. Many factories and infrastructure projects were established outside of Russia, providing jobs and economic opportunities to regions like Ukraine and Belarus. Furthermore, the internal borders of the USSR were often realigned based on ethnic considerations, leading to some regions gaining territory previously held by Russia. Now let's consider the degree of autonomy granted to non-Russian republics. It was a mixed bag. Everyone was subjected to Stalinist repression, but if a regional leader had a good relationship with Stalin, they could often exercise more freedom in managing their territory. Conversely, if Stalin disapproved of a leader or a region, like the Baltic states, which had been independent for over 20 years prior to their annexation, then the situation became dire. Stalin initiated the relocation of Russians to the Baltic to secure a loyal population that would remain loyal to Moscow. The same patterns emerged in territories acquired from Poland after World War II. Many Ukrainians and Poles were forcibly removed from their homes, and those who resisted faced brutal consequences. So did the centralization of power in Russia benefit Russians and the Russian state? Yes, to a certain extent. The quality of life for individuals in major Russian cities like Moscow and Leningrad was generally better compared to those in the outer republics. However, the disparity wasn't as stark as one might think. Many individuals living in Eastern Russia experienced conditions similar to those in Georgia or Belarus. Throughout most of its existence, the USSR maintained a certain prestige associated with its Russian heart. But in reality, the benefits of the Soviet system were primarily felt by those residing in major urban centers across the entire Union, not just by the Russian ethnic group. As we reflect on the complexities of the Soviet Union's structure, it's clear that while it may have aspired to be a union of equals, the realities of governance, culture, and economic distribution often painted a different picture. Was the Soviet Union a genuine union of republics or a Russian empire in disguise? The answer lies in understanding the tensions and contradictions inherent in its very formation. If you found this discussion of the Soviet Union's identity thought-provoking, don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. What are your perspectives on the nature of the Soviet Union? Let's dive deeper into this fascinating subject together.